Hey guys, it's me Seren, back with another video. This video is going to be the review and recap for episode 4 of Lovecraft Country, which was called A History of Violence. I know in my other reviews I have not talked about the titles, but this one had a really big title card, and I felt that the title was a commentary on the history of the violence of white people, so I felt like it was important from colonization to nuclear war, slavery, racism, and racist violence. I felt that there was a commentary on anthropology as violence with museums, artifacts, the concept of savages. I felt like this one made a very clear through line to the connection between white supremacy and history and our American view of history and anthropology and culture and all these things, and just how white people have this history of violence that they not only glorify, but they gloss it over, they smooth it over, they teach it to us in the museums and in school. Titus Brentwythe in this episode has a whole wing of a museum dedicated to him, right? So this episode delves into that, starting from the title, and I just wanted to address that before I sort of got into the meat and potatoes of this review. This video will be in the good, the bad, and the ugly format because I did have some bad and some ugly this time around. So we open with Montrose Freeman grieving his brother while listening to the radio and talk of nuclear bombs and war with the barbaric Soviet Union. Montrose says while he's crying and drinking, why do you keep coming up with death for the rest of us to eat, which I loved that line. It really encapsulates, again, what I was just talking about sort of some of the overarching themes of this show, about the history of, violence, white violence, and violence in sort of white culture and white society. And he's looking at, and some of the, again, the through lines and relationships between racism and the violence that was enacted against, Black Americans, and just this sort of taste, this appetite for violence, barbarism, death. This is a part of Dr. Joy DeGrau's post-traumatic slave syndrome theory that, white people have sort of developed a taste for violence over time, centuries of brutalizing, other races and subjugation and enslavement. And what does this mean for them? What does this mean for their psyche? What does this mean for their, their white culture? All these things that I feel like the show was, tossing around and exploring some of these theories. Montrose is looking at childhood pictures of himself and his brother George, and there are some sort of audio flashbacks of arguments that we've seen on this show, as well as, sorry, there's something in my eye. As well as arguments that definitely were between Montrose and George and Montrose and Tick from previous points in their lives, and definitely also some audio of him beating Tick, which we've only heard about through exposition. So as he drinks, he's kind of reliving these moments, and he ends up taking out the book of bylaws of the Order of the Dawn, which George gave to him, and burns it, throws it in a trash can, lights it on fire, burns it. While burning it, he says, "Smells like Tulsa." Another reference to Tulsa. I'm really wondering if we're going to get some type of a Watchmen crossover, because now these references seem deliberate. Like they're too numerous to be deliberate. It wasn't just like a throwaway thing. Like, it's something that they keep referencing. Really curious to see how that plays out. But after seeing the name of the episode, the Lovecraft Country title card for this one was like some Goonies type shit with a skull and a compass, this like blue map thing. It just made me think of the Goonies. So I was like, okay, I wonder if this is going to be like a fantasy adventure type episode. And it did. It stayed true to form, and it was a fantasy and adventure type of genre. So last week's episode was horror. This episode was adventure. We've seen like some pulp B-movie stuff. They're really tackling various genres with each episode while really staying true to the ideas of, mixing speculative fiction with racism. But they're just showing us all these different genres, which I'm really enjoying, and I really, really like this one a lot. It didn't beat last week's episode for me, but I did like the overall tone and vision of this episode quite a bit. Christina shows up at Letty's house, and she can't come in. There's like a magical portal when she tries to come in. She literally can't. Just like when she put the portal on the doors so that they couldn't leave their rooms when they were at the lodge. And she says to Letty, like, oh, who helped you evict Hiram? And Letty realizes that the money actually came from Christina to buy the house. We see the blood from the ritual that they did is still on the door frame. They show it several times in the shot. The blood X, the goat blood, from when, they did the wards and stuff on the door and they cast Hiram out. The blood is still there, so Christina literally can't come in. This part reminded me of hoodoo rituals, and it also reminded me of Moses, how they put the blood on the door when God sent the angel into Egypt to take all of the firstborn. We hear repeatedly in this episode, smite and God smited Adam. Like, there are some serious biblical references in this show, which I'm really curious to see how that's gonna build and like what that's leading up to. So, but yeah, Christina can't come in. Letty realizes that Christina wants something in the house, and just as previously, she's using them to get it. Christina is like using these Black people to get what she wants. She says they come to the realization that Christina basically used Tick to kill her father. She's basically trying to do a feminist hostile takeover of this order, and she's using these Black people. So she used Tick. She kind of brought him in. Tick later on says, like, she used me like a Trojan horse. She brought him in for this ritual that she knew her father was going to let down his invulnerability spell, his protection, to do it. And then, basically she encouraged Tick before the ceremony to sort of fight back. He saw his ancestor. He kind of fought back magically. They destroyed the lodge. She ended up giving this money to Letty so that Letty could buy this house. Obviously, this house is involved. She's using him to get what she wants. And when Letty says this to her, it's like, here comes Christina with the shit. She's like, don't let the men fool you into thinking it's about them. And you don't need to be on Tick's side. Like, he's a man. Like, you need to be on my side because, like, we're both women. And I'm just like, bitch, like, but you're using her. Like, you don't give a fuck about using these Black people like they're Black. They're Black, so you can get away with doing whatever to them because you're white. Like, bitch, you're racist. Like, and you're really trying to get on Letty's good side with this, like, woman power shit so you could get in this house. Like, God, white women are so sneaky. Like, you a sneaky bitch, Christina. Like, you are really giving me Karen from Daredevil. Just sneaky. And then being like, I'm a woman, girl power. No, sneaky. You sneaky is what you are. Christina reveals that she wants Hiram's orrery. I hope I'm saying that right. Orrery, which is a model of the solar system. And we know from last week, episode 3, Hippolyta found this. And it turns out she took it. She took it out of the house. We see it in their, I guess, office space. Because they're still doing the book. And they're still working with the publisher. And, like, they're still doing their thing. So she basically takes it. I don't think this is in their house. You guys can feel free to correct me. I think it's in their comic book shop or whatever. And so she has it in there now. She calls her father to talk about it. And she reveals that she explains what an orrery is, because I imagine that most of us don't know what it is. And it's a mechanical model of the solar system that moves and predicts the movements of planets. And she reveals that this orrery in particular shows a galaxy that could sustain, or a universe, galaxy, a galaxy. I'm pretty sure she says galaxy. That could sustain 2 suns. To me, this is a nod to Barsoom. This is a nod to Princess of Mars. It's a nod to Mars in the Edgar Rice Burroughs Princess of Mars series. And Barsoom was also a huge influence on Tatooine in Star Wars, which also has 2 suns. So there's 2 suns on the orrery. She cannot get the gears working. She can't get to the gears to figure out how it works. So I feel like, obviously, foreshadowing, she's involved. She's going to figure out how this thing works. A time machine is mentioned in this episode later on. So I'm guessing this orrery is a time machine. That's just speculation. I don't want any spoilers for anybody. Obviously, we're discussing what happened in the episode, so spoilers for that. But please don't leave comments like explaining exactly how it works and what's going to happen, because I would personally like to wait and see how the show explains it. I just want to say that. But they mention a time machine, and they continue showing this like gold thing, and it's something. Like it's something, and I'm guessing that's what it is. So I'm going to wait and see how the show explains it, but I thought that was, like, really interesting. Like, definitely Hippolyta and Diana are now being kind of, like, drawn into this via their own separate, you know, plotline, storyline, which I do enjoy, because this orrery does belong to Hiram, along with these lost pages and all these things that they're all looking for. So everybody's involved, you know, nobody's really left out. So that also ends up actually being a major running theme of this episode, is that they're sort of all in this together, and yet they're still trying to lie to each other and keep secrets from each other and keep each other, you know, like, oh, I'm trying to protect you, like, I don't want you to be involved, when clearly they're all fucking involved. Letty confronts Tick in the library, where she calls Christina, a white sorceress bitch, which is fucking hilarious. For the whole rest of the show, in the back of my mind, I'm gonna be like, white sorceress bitch. They realize that Christina, again, is using them to sort of further her plans of what I feel is, you know, basically for her to either become the head of the order, or, you know, get in the order, or remake the order. You know, number one, she feels some type of way about the fact that she cannot join because she's a woman. And so she's trying to, like, pull this coup using them. And they're realizing what she's doing, and they kind of want to beat her at her own game. But they still, at this point in the episode, don't really want to work together. You know, Tick especially is trying to sort of shoulder all of this alone, which is fucking annoying. And I'm going to say some things later on about, like, Tick's personality that bother me. But, like, he's very patronizing towards Letty. He thinks that he's protecting her by leaving her out, but he's not. He continues to say things like, I don't want you involved. He acts like his father towards her. Like, the way that his father acts towards him, doing certain things to try and protect him, Tick, which Tick hates, he does the same exact thing to Letty because he doesn't want Letty to be involved. So there were some really good, you know, character building scenes, like the scene between Tick and Letty in the library, where we're sort of coming to these realizations about our characters and their personalities and things that they're going to have to do and change moving forward if they want to be successful in finding these pages and finding this orrery and beating the order and beating Christina and, you know, and dealing with all this stuff that's going on. Really good character building scenes in this episode. And they're sort of off on this, you know, adventure, this sort of 80s, I would say 80s, the way that it's stylized, 80s style adventure. Letty says they should ask his father for help, and Tick refuses, but then we see that his father was the last one, of course, to check out these books, which was a really nice sort of way of conveying that information, because he is in a library looking at, you know, all these books and doing all this research. Last person to check it out, Montrose Freeman. Loved that. Loved the little boy in this scene that kept telling him, shh, who was reading Journey to the Center of the Earth, which we have a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge moment with that later on. But the whole library scene was really, really cute. Tick goes to talk to his father at the bar, and Letty is already there, of course. Montrose doesn't want to help them at all, but he accidentally lets it slip that there are 34 other lodges or something like that. So I think that there are 35 altogether, and they destroyed one of them. And they try to get more information out of his father, but it's almost like, you know, like, how do you know that? I don't. You didn't hear that from me, you know, like that type of thing. Letty basically tells these niggas that they are both hard-headed as fuck and just alike. And ultimately, they all end up, the whole family, out on the road looking for this vault in a museum in Boston that Titus Burtwig donated a ton of shit to and did renovations on. Diana, Dee, and Hippolyta tag along because they want to take her car to this museum to look for these pages, as does one of the neighbors who lied and said that he hooked up with Letty in high school. He hitches a ride with them as well. When they leave and the neighbor shows up asking for the ride, Hippolyta says something like, you know, George always said Willie, the car's name is Willie, George always said Willie would be able to fit the south side of Chicago in the back, you know, if it had to, something like that. And then her face, like her whole face just changes. Like her whole face just crumbles as soon as she realizes she mentioned George and she gets to thinking about George. And another standout scene, Ingenue Ellis just be fucking acting like, just without a word. The camera's on her face, and it's not even the front of her face, it's the side profile. And her whole face is just like, and George is gone and something is up and nobody wants to tell me what's going on. And just everything is weird and I'm still grieving, I'm mourning, like, and all this is just like conveyed with these like subtle shifts in her face. Knockout scene, every scene she's in knocks it out the park. When they get to Boston, they split up at the museum and Montrose, Letty, and Tick look for the entrance to the vault in the Titus Bretwith wing, which is so named because it is full of the artifacts that the famed explorer Titus Bretwith was given in exchange for teaching the savage tribes the basic civilized ways of man. Yes, I wrote that down from the episode because this is how they really fucking talk in schools and museums, Thanksgiving and shit, things that are fully made up that they teach you, right? Like propaganda, colonizer shit. This episode addressed that head on with what we already know about this dude, you know, who he really is, and him being honored in this museum. You know, like, we honor murderers, colonizers, rapists, racists. We honor these people. And it also felt like this was sort of a wink to the removal and destruction of a lot of these monuments that we've been seeing recently as well, because the entrance to the vault is under this huge statue of Titus Bretwith with these fucking alligators, crocodiles at his fucking side in this basket. I was like, I hope it's not a motherfucking black baby in there, you know, that he was going to feed to these fucking crocodiles. Is that what this statue symbolizes? Because on this show, you just never know. And they end up finding the entrance, and the rest of the episode takes on a very, again, like a Steven Spielberg feel. Tons of nods to the Goonies, to Indiana Jones, even to the Mummy, just the fantasy adventure genre, which, you know, historically we normally do not see black protagonists. So it was really, really cool as a fan of that genre to see that. I have to say, like, it was really nice. It was cool. And the production values are so high on these HBO shows that in a way it is like watching a movie. It was really cool. It had this sort of light opening like the Mummy, and then they climbed into this underground room like Indiana Jones, and there's a series of interconnected tunnels down there. They have to figure out the way to go. There's this sort of pirate theme, which is serving me the Goonies. Tick says this is some Journey to the Center of the Earth type shit, which the kid was reading in the library. Just very fantastical, you know, like fantastical. There's an inscription in the entrance of the vault that says, "Beware all ye who tread the path, ever the tides shall rise." Like mouth, you know, from the Goonies. And later on, we do learn that this is actually a literal quote because there's water down there where they're going that will rise and threaten to drown them as they venture deeper and deeper. They play this Steven Spielberg music as they're deliberately trying to figure out which way to go and solve these challenges over the course of the episode, like da 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 da. Hey you guys, like just treasure hunt music, super fun. Just I liked it. It worked for me. And I normally hate this type of thing. You guys know, like, I hated Stranger Things. But this one I thought was just a lot of fun and not, like, too on the nose. And I think they're accomplishing that for me personally because it's not set in the 80s. It's giving us all of those classic 80s adventure hallmarks, but we know that when this time period is. There's just a lot of genre bending that is working for me. I don't know. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. There's a death chasm, like a huge cave with the little skinny plank, so they have to walk the plank, which Tick actually says we have to walk the plank. I was like, okay, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Goonies. As they try to cross the plank, a huge axe starts swinging. There's booby traps. The plank literally starts to slowly disappear, so there's like magical booby traps. They get to the end. The door is locked. They have to figure out the combination of these tiles. Luckily, Montrose did read the bylaws before burning them. So he figured out the code, which is from these verses, which I wrote down. It's something like, Adam named, Eve fucked, God brought monsters, monsters devoured, God smited Eve. That's the bylaws, it seems, that they believe and live by, and that was the code to get in. That part also reminded me of when they had to play the bone piano or B flat. And something that I felt was really interesting about Montrose being there with them is that I feel like by burning the book of the bylaws, he sort of inadvertently made himself essential to their mission. Because now he can't just give them the book at any point and be like, I'm not participating anymore, you do what you want. He didn't want to help, but now he has the information that they need. And he's the only person that has the information that they need, and he can't give it to them in the physical book. And he still feels beholden to trying to protect the family, which he says, and that was George's dying wish. So it's like, if Tick won't leave well enough alone, now he has to help, especially because he destroyed the book, but he read it first. I feel like that was good plot development for Montrose, just sort of like resigning himself to the fact that we're doing this. Like, we're doing it. We're doing it. Get in, loser. We're going treasure hunting. We're doing it. It's happening. When they got inside the door, when they put the code in, they got inside the door. There's water in there. Of course, the water is rising. Ever the tide shall rise. Tick realizes that at high tide, the room will flood, so they have less than an hour to find the pages of the book and get out before they drown. They're shivering. The water's obviously freezing. And what happens? There's a fucking body in there. Who is it? It's one of Letty's white neighbors that went missing while they were trying to exorcise the demons in the house. So I thought it seemed like maybe the house purged them itself. I don't know if maybe there's somebody else in there, but it seemed like they didn't know, and I kind of felt like this episode basically confirmed that Letty and them are not the ones that put the bodies down there. So it's still a little bit open-ended as to, like, did the house do it itself? Is the house sentient? Is there, more ghosts in there? Like, how exactly does it work? But there was a body in there. It was one of Letty's neighbors that went missing. And then they're at the elevator. They're at the fucking elevator in Letty's house. They're all the way back in Chicago. They walked basically all the way from Boston to Chicago via these underground tunnels. So it's really a whole underground labyrinth of tunnels, and obviously these tunnels are some kind of magical portal because they got from Boston to Chicago in like the blink of an eye. So really interesting to see if they flesh that out a little bit more moving forward. While they're down there, Montrose confesses that George gave him the sort of book of rules, the bylaws, and that he read it and burned it to protect them. Tick gets upset at that, and he's like, you're going to tell me what else you read in that book. But then Tick turns around and tries to put Letty and Montrose in the elevator and send them up to protect them. Talking about some, like it's too dangerous and they should just go up to the house and wait. And I just really was like, Spider-Man meme, like you're pointing at each other, but you're all doing the exact same thing. And Letty finally tells Tick he needs to cut it the fuck out. Like, can you stop acting like this is only happening to you? You're not the center of the universe. Like, your father got kidnapped. I died. Like, stop being so selfish. They're already a part of this, stop acting like they're not, like you're not there by yourself. They're there with you and they can help you. And so I really appreciated it because it was starting to get on my nerves too, the way that he was fucking acting. And I was really wondering like how long this is going to go on. So hopefully after this episode, they're able to sort of gel as a unit and move forward. His father sort of tries to encourage him to apologize to Letty, and they have a little nice father-son moment before they get to another body, because there's a lot of bodies and skeletons and shit in this water. This water looks fucking disgusting that they're in, just FYI. There's like a whole fucking disembodied arm in this water, and then they realize that, oh, it's a lock, it looks like a lock with the wrong key. Again, the mummy, you put your arm in the shit, it fucking bites your arm off. I don't know if that's from somewhere else, but when I see that, it makes me think of the mummy. I felt like during this scene where they see the disembodied arm in the water, the camera showed it from a really interesting angle. They've been playing around with a lot of really interesting sort of camera points and viewpoints, which I've mentioned in other reviews. This was like a long take with the camera sort of half submerged in water. So you see them standing in the water, and you see them above the water, and then you see the top of the water. I can't think of the word for it right now. And then you see the stuff going on under the water. So you see this arm floating, you see all this like red stuff, you see them like pull the arm out. It's really fucking disgusting. You see that when the disembodied arm floats away, it had a big ring on it, which obviously was not the right ring. So Tick pulls out his ring, his real Order of the Dawn ring. He puts it on and he puts his arm in there. It's so tense because we're wondering what's going to happen. And then he screams and it's like taking his blood out. And we see that it's like filling up these blood machines. And then it opens, which made me feel like you had to be the blood of Titus, most likely. Otherwise, you can't get in. So it literally could not have been anyone except Tick, which I thought was really interesting. So a trap door opens, a ladder falls out, they climb up. It's very One-Eyed Willy. There's a whole dinner table full of people, like skeletons, like petrified. As they move through it, again, it looks like to me, a ship, like a sunken pirate ship. It looked like he had a whole community, right? A whole village, all of the savages that he civilized. It looks like he had all of them petrified down there. They get to a room in the back where there's a skeleton that's like laying there dead, holding the papers. They walk in, and the fucking skeleton starts coming back, starts like regenerating or something, and fully regenerates back to a fucking living, breathing flesh person. The flesh person says that their name is Yahima Marikati, and they're a two-spirit. My caption said that they were speaking Arawak, which I believe is, some type of native or indigenous language. And the two-spirit basically explains that Titus, came on his ship asking for someone who could read his book, which we know is the Order of the Dawn book, these certain pages for decoding the language of Adam. And that Yahima started to help him decipher it because they didn't, really feel that there was any reason not to trust Titus, and then realizing that he was evil and greedy and saying that they wouldn't help him anymore until they were returned to their people, which Titus said he would do, but instead being an evil racist white supremacist, they took what looked to be the whole entire, village and imprisoned them there in this creepy, time capsule ship under the water. I really hope it's explained how Yahima came back, though, seriously. Yahima says that they won't help them, sort of like, I trusted the wrong person once and I won't make that mistake again. Montrose tries to just, take the papers, and of course they seem magically booby-trapped in some way, That's like the first rule of these adventures. You can't just take shit. It has to be given to you. And the glass cracks and the whole room floods. They end up getting out, but when Yahima tries to talk, once they are in the elevator going up, this, scream comes out. And it turns out that Titus turned Yahima into a siren so that if they got out of his death lair, they could never speak and explain what happened. Tick wants to keep Yahima in the house to try and figure out, where they came from, how did they come back, just help them decipher the pages, just to help them. But Montrose, who still doesn't want to be involved, he has another little cute father-son moment with Tick, and then he slits Yahima's throat. I don't know if this is going to actually kill Yahima. I don't know if Yahima can even be killed. Is Yahima even actually alive? They were literally a skeleton that, regenerated. So, I don't know where that's going to go. But obviously, this is still meant to show that, even though Montrose is working with them, Montrose still is not fully on board. And is still trying to, not get them and their family deeper involved, even though they're already in deep shit. Another ending scene shows Dee and Hippolyta driving back because obviously Montrose, Tick, and Letty never came back and met them in the museum and somehow ended up back in Chicago, which Dee says, how did they get back to Chicago without the car? How did they get back without us? Everything has been weird since Dad died. Weird. They know. They're trying to keep Dee and Hippolyta in the dark, which again is sort of another level of this not telling people what's going on because you're trying to keep them in the dark to protect them. But they know something weird is going on, something is up. We see that Dee is drawing some more on her father's atlas, which Hippolyta asks her, where did you get that? She says she found it in the glove box. They have circled the route that they took and where they ended in Devon County. So Hippolyta turns the car around to head there. They're going to go check it out. We'll have to see what happens. The monsters are still there. We haven't seen those monsters in a few episodes, so I'm wondering if those monsters are going to be reintroduced. We'll see where it goes. That's basically the episode. For the good, I just really enjoyed this this little Goonies treasure hunt adventure. I thought it was a fun episode. I loved the booby traps. I loved the death puzzles, the Steven Spielberg music, just the whole vibe. Like I said previously, it seems like every episode they tackle a different genre. So each one thus far has been really tonally different with this specific genre that we're kind of meant to allude to with the title cards. Even though the tone of this mix of racism and speculative fiction is the same, they're playing around with format a lot, they're playing around with genre a lot, and I just really love this genre bending, format bending approach that they're taking. I loved the scene of, the little side scene of Dee and Hippolyta in the museum, and they're looking at the stars, and Hippolyta says, that one there is called Hera's Chariot, that comet, and Hippolyta named it, but if you look it up, she says it'll be attributed to a white girl named Mary Studebaker or something like that, because they didn't want a little colored girl to be the face of their competition. And so Dee yells out, my mama named Hera's Chariot. And I love that, because I love acting up in museums. I go and act up in museums all the time, because, they don't even be wanting us to be in there, it's true. So it's just like, go in there, cause a scene. Love it. Montrose was great this episode. George was great this episode. Letty was my fave character this episode. She might be my favorite character on the show, even though I do also really like Montrose as well, which is maybe weird, but Letty kind of just talks straight, tells it how it is. She's a firecracker. I really thought this was a good episode for character development and character progression. I thought, Hippolyta's face in the scene where they leave to go on the trip was great. The scene with Tick and Letty in the library, the various scenes between Tick and his father, Montrose's choices when he realizes that he has to be involved if he's going to protect his family, even when he's making choices, even though he's making choices that are questionable. It's really interesting to see the character progression. Tick coming to the realization that he is more like his father than he would like to admit. So I'm really interested in seeing, what happens with their relationship moving forward. It seems like it's moving, towards some type of resolution, and seeing how they grow as characters. And hopefully Tick won't keep trying to just do everything on his own anymore, and hopefully he will accept that they are all involved. There was also some insinuation that his father is gay. We'll see where that goes. Something about like how did he know the security guard? Oh, he's a friend at the bar. In the very first episode, we saw a dude like getting head in the bar, like in a back alley. So I'm really interested to see like where that goes. I feel like that's been insinuated a few times. And also, it's been insinuated that Montrose is not actually Tick's father. So I'm wondering, was Montrose gay? And did George get somebody pregnant? And so they just kind of like put it off on him. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. And as I said previously, they mentioned Tulsa again. So I'm wondering again if this is going to be some type of like crossover to Watchmen as well. I also want to say that for these episodes to be, pretty short, they're generally under an hour, 50 minutes. A lot happens. They're very snappy. They're very quick paced. A lot of the times I don't like feature length episodes of television because sometimes they can just feel like wheel spinning and filler, I've talked a lot about Westworld for this. Like, you watch 83 minutes of Westworld and nothing happens. Except, like, Maeve realizes they're in a simulation, like, okay, did I really need 83 minutes for that? Like, these shorter episodes of, the garbage is outside. These shorter episodes of Lovecraft Country are really tightly plotted. They're more deliberately plotted and paced, moving the plot forward, moving the characters forward, doing a really good job with pacing. I just think they're doing a really, really, really great job thus far with this show, 4 episodes in. Okay, it was beeping. So the bad. I hate putting this in the bad, but I'm still unsure about Tick's character. I'm still a little in the dark when it comes to some of his actions. Whatever happened in the Korean War is still, only being hinted at, and we're about to be halfway through the season. I'm wondering, did he really kill the Korean woman? What was up with that? Who did he call in the first episode? Tick is really still shrouded in a lot of mystery for me personally that I wish... I get that it has to be somewhat mysterious. I would have liked to know a little bit more about his ancestor by now. Like, we saw his ancestor And we've like sort of never seen her again, you know? And I just feel like, especially if they're about to be introducing these white characters with more screen time, which it seems like we're building up to that, I feel like Tick could be a little bit more fleshed out, personally, for me by now. Like, Christina got her own scene in this episode. We're learning more about Montrose as one of the main characters, if not the main character. I feel like Tick should be a little bit more, like, what really is going on in Tick's head, just, you know, he could be a little bit more fleshed out for me. Other characters are getting like full story arcs, and yet I still have some fundamental questions about Tick, you know? I don't know. I did not like that Christina got so much screen time. I thought her scenes were blah. I don't like looking at her. I don't like looking at her playing with white kids. Just everybody on my screen I know is a racist. Too much whiteness for me. She meets with the sheriff, who really is a warlock or something, because there was like a wall and there was like a door. But she implies that, you know, he's kind of like on her, like, you know, you're sniffing around my lodge, like you and your daddy destroyed your lodge, like don't come sniffing around mine. She implies that he's not really a member of the order. He tells her, you know, well, bitch, you're definitely not a member of the order because you're a woman. So again, with the sexism element, which honestly is boring to me. Like, I get where they're trying to go with it, but, you know, there's a white woman somewhere right now writing a think piece on how Christina Brett is not really that bad and how she's just a victim of patriarchy. Like, they're really leaning on a white feminist angle for Christina, but they are making it clear that she's a bad person. I feel like they're trying to, you know, give more critique and commentary on the relationships between white feminism and white supremacy and anti-black racism. It is really putting a spotlight on, you know, the white women that are racist but feel like they are oppressed as women, so it doesn't matter, white feminists. And I just hate Christina. I just hate her. Maybe that's not fair to put this in the bad because maybe I'm supposed to hate her. Like, she is the villain, so like maybe that's the point. But it's just not working for me. Every time I see her face, I feel bothered. I hate her little sidekick, William, or whatever the fuck his fucking name is. Like, they show him beating the shit out of the cops that are following Christina. You know, tell your captain, Miss Brett doesn't like to be followed. Like, they're trying to set him up as some muscle. And I'm just like, who the fuck is he? Like, who is he? He said he's not their butler. He's not her brother. Who is he? What is he about? Why is he here? Actually, I don't care. We see him trying to, you know, wiggle in and get in good with Ruby. I'm going to get to that in the ugly because I was disgusted. I would rather they do all their little machinations off screen and just come back for the big showdown at the end or something. But that's just me. Like, maybe you guys don't mind seeing them, but every time I see them, I'm just grossed the fuck out. Which, again, maybe that's the point. And if that's the point, you know, bravo, it works. They're creepy. The contemporary music continues to be a problem for me, especially because in this episode they had some music selections that I actually really did like for the fun sort of action adventure sequences. So, like, Bitch Better Have My Money playing for Christina as she's driving, I did not like. And I love that song, but no, it didn't work. I hated the music for the scene where Ruby went to the bank and then into the department store. Like, I felt like the contemporary music was really overwhelming in this episode, and I just didn't like it. I just don't think it works. I feel like that's really Jordan Peele's, like, touch. Like, that's his stamp on it, and I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't like it when he does that in his own projects, and I don't like it here. I just don't feel like it works. So, since we were just talking about Ruby and how I didn't like the music in her scene, let's go ahead and slide into the ugly. I don't like Ruby. I've decided I don't care for Ruby. I don't care for her character. She's the weak link in the house. It seems like the Bretwoods, you know, they're warlocks or, you know, they're vampires. I know they're monsters. They're Lovecraft monster pet things also seem to have like a vampiric element that they like can't take the light. They can't take the sun. And it seemed like they can't come in the house unless they're invited. So as soon as I seen that William, I don't even know if that's his name, but I'm just going to keep calling him that. I think that's his name. Was like pushing up on Ruby, you know, pushing up on her at the bar and, you know, this, that, and the third. I was like, she's the weak link in the house. Like, she's probably going to like let him in the house. And then probably once he's in the house, he's going to be able to let Christina in the house. Like, she's the weak link. Like, you are the weakest link. They had a whole interracial sex scene. Ew. Disgusting. I did not need to see a member of the IKEA Mafia from Umbrella Academy in a sex scene with anyone. just her whole sister's plot line, I'm not feeling it. Thumbs down. I don't think I care for the actress either. Maybe it's her, like maybe she's rubbing me the wrong way and she's like souring me on the character of Ruby. Maybe if like the actress was somebody else. I don't know. It's just something off about her that I'm not feeling. It's not just that she like had sex with the white boy, ew, gross, disgusting, and like is obviously going to be the one to like let them into the house. Like she's clearly going to be the way that they get in because she also has this like bitterness towards like Letty. She's clearly going to be the entry point of like these vampires, these monsters into the house. But even outside of that, like her whole plot line, like and her obsession with this department store and like I don't know, I don't know. I just don't really think I like where they're going with her. Her actress does nothing for me. Her character, her plot line. I just every time they showed her, I was just like, no, I don't. I'm not feeling it. I don't know. I don't know. And it seems like she's another character that they're gearing up to give more screen time and make more of like a mainstay. And I don't know how I feel about that. So I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think of some of these characters. What did you guys think of episode 4? I know it did come out a bit early, so there was a little bit more time to think about it and process it. But overall, though, I'm still loving this show. I'm enjoying it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Food for thought, as always. See you guys next time. Peace.